Good evening and welcome to this show from Girls for Peace. My name is Karem Barratt, and I'd like to start this evening by lighting a candle. A candle for peace. And say a little prayer for this light. I light this candle for the ones who have no light. I light this candle for the ones that have no voice. I light this candle for the ones who have no hope. I light this candle for the ones who have no peace. May there be light in their life. May there be justice and hope along their path. May there be peace in the world, our world, north and east, west and south, all around. May there be peace. Let's put this little light in a lantern of love and peace. And just put it next to me so we can illuminate this evening, which I hope it will be interesting and a bit inspiring. So let me start by introducing myself for those who are new to the show. My name is Reverend Karem Barrett, and I am an Interfaith Minister. I am originally from Venezuela, and I've been in the UK for almost 12 years now. Now, about my spiritual path, it has been a bit a winding road, an interesting road, sometimes a bit of a frustrating road, but I would not change it or trade it. I started my spiritual life as a Catholic in the Venezuelan version of Catholicism. And to be honest, I was brought up as a very laid-back Catholic. I did go to nun school, but the nuns in my school were quite modern and very open-minded, especially for the times. So I was taught about Jesus and God the Father and the Holy Spirit and the main essence of Catholicism, but never pitted against any other religion. Never being told that my religion was superior to anybody else's or that somebody would go to hell because they were a Catholic. And to be quite honest, I was not fully aware there were still other religions out there until I was around 12. I mean, we do have people from other religions in Venezuela, but they're really a very small minority. I always tell the story of my next door neighbor, whom I grew up with, and he was my brother's best friend. And I had no idea that he was a Jew until his wedding day, when I realized we were going to a temple and not to a church. So in that sense, it was good because I knew no of any prejudice against other religions, and I'm always grateful for that. And the fact that my family was very laid back. Sometimes I wish they may have been a bit more committed, but then again, because they were so laid back, I had this sense of freedom. I was never threatened for not believing or for not believing in a certain way, because basically I was taught, some prayers, the basic Jesus story, and that was about it. Now, as I grew up, I started studying other spiritualities, especially the earth-based spiritualities, or pagan spirituality like Wicca. This was in the States, the United States, and I found it very, very interesting and fascinating even. But I would say that at the time I was a student. I had it more of like a hobby, but I would not call myself a practitioner, nor in those days. And eventually, they did bring me back to Christianity in a way. because I started seeing, some parallels between what I read about the pagan spiritualities present and past and the Catholicism I knew. So I did go back to the church in my 30s and started to become a committed Catholic. That kind of stopped when I got married to a Briton and moved here because it was my second marriage, so I was expelled from the church, and that really offended me. To this day, I don't understand it, but I accept it, and I just said, "Oh, okay, well, you don't want me. What can we do?" So here in England, I started going to the Anglican church. And to be honest, I found it very welcoming. Nobody asked me to leave because I was not Anglican. You know, I was invited to go to the service and take communion, or sometimes they wouldn't call it communion, but you know, the bread with the wine. I just found it, I hate to say the word boring. Let's say a bit tame for me. I need a little bit more action, a little bit more joy or songs. I'm not quite sure. But then I did the Alpha course and start going to evangelical church. And to be honest, I was pretty happy there for a long time. I became really involved in the church. I became a very committed Christian. Not only going to church on Sundays, I went to Bible class. I helped around the church and volunteered. I started watching Christian programs and listening to Christian songs, especially the Bible. I was very familiar with the Bible. So I started studying it, not only on my own, but within different scholars and their ideas about the Bibles and the history of the Bibles and the culture where the Bible was written and the times. And that did create a lot of questions in my mind for a long time. But, you know, I hung there learning as much as I could. But the reality was that these questions were beginning to really bother me, and I could not find answers that would satisfy me. I gotta say that my evangelical years were very important to me because there was some kind of cleansing that I went through, and I'm very appreciative and grateful for that. But the questions that were bothering me became very strong, and I felt I could not continue in the church while I had those questions. Questions such as, do people go to hell because they didn't believe in Jesus? Because either they had no access to the teaching, or they had the access, but somehow the teaching did not touch them. That was something that I could simply not believe. And I will go back to that during this conversation. Questions about what's real and what's myth, history and how historical accurate was the Bible. Questions about the aftermath. You know, sometimes I hear some Christians saying that, you know, when the church gets power, the world's going to be better, and then you study history and you realize, at least in Europe and America, the church had power for a long, long, long time, and yet things didn't get better. You know, people were still poor, and justice was still be done, and church officials sometimes acted in a horrible, sinful manner. In any case, one day I woke up and I decided I was an atheist. I just could not believe it. I could not believe this. I didn't want it in my life. I was fed up with it. In hindsight, I think I define myself as an atheist just because I didn't want it to feel like a fool. Because again, there's so many questions didn't seem to have an answer. So it seemed a bit foolish and superstitious to hang on to a belief just as it was given to me at the time. When it didn't stand up to scrutiny, you know, it wasn't scientific based. I wanted to be Mr. Spock, all logical. And I had my atheist year, which started as being a very angry atheist, and I developed this horrible hobby of sorts. So criticizing Christianity, and putting posts in Christian sites, and I'm very, very sorry to anybody there felt offended for what I said. I apologize. But then I come down and just live life, and I realized that if I was going to do good deeds, and if I'm going to be good to other people, I could do it. I could still be a decent, honest human being without the idea of a God. And I found that very interesting. I found the fact that I rejoice in doing good. I rejoice in working with charities, for example, or giving back to the community. Not because I was afraid of going to hell if I didn't, or not because I wanted, what should we call it in English? Brownie points? Brownie points with God. God, I did this. Give me my little star and be happy and pat me on my back because I'm such a good person. I did it because of that shared humanity that we all have, and we learn to see ourselves in the others. And actually, I learned that during my atheist year, see myself in the other. Somehow get off my pedestal. I was no better or worse in principle than anybody else. And being a Christian or a Catholic or a religious person didn't necessarily make me a good person. It was my commitment to be the very best that I could be and do as much good that I was able to. That made me a good person. And I could do that without God. And I found that very, very interesting and inspiring. And I don't mean to offend any atheist or agnostic if there's anybody listening tonight. But I honestly think that desire of helping, of giving, of sharing, of loving the other person is spirit at work. It's the spirit within us at work. You will not see it that way. I didn't see it that way that year, but as things move on, that's how I see it. And eventually, I accepted that I was a spiritual person, and not only that, I wanted to work within spirituality. But I could not define myself. I still can't define myself very much. So I trained with the Interfaith Foundation and did their 2-year seminary, and I got ordained in 2013. And right now, I would say I'm very oriented towards paganism, especially Druidism. I'm still studying it. I'm still learning. But like I said, I don't like to put a label to myself right now. So I'll be happy with spiritual worker or spiritual person or someone who's living the human experience, knowing that she's a spirit. And that's me. That's Karem. But the topic of tonight, which is reincarnation, is in a way related to what I was saying with my Christian years, evangelical Christian years, and my inability to believe in hell. Not only did I feel that hell was an offense to God and the goodness of God, I just could not see the point of it. One of the things that we learn here on earth is that human beings, for better or for worse, they get accustomed to everything, even in the worst circumstances. I'm not going to say they're necessarily happy clappy if they're living in very difficult circumstances, but we do get eventually accustomed to it, and it starts feeling a bit less bad or less evil or less sickening or or just less. So the way my mind works, the conclusion that I got was for hell to be real and people being punished forever, it would be this situation where the punishment is tweaked ever so often and made worse. Once the people get accustomed to certain pain, then make it even worse, or let's poke it somewhere else. Or so you will have to have a God involved in torture somehow, and not only once, but for eternity, to punish people. And that's just out of my concept of divinity that I simply could not accept it. I could not accept the idea of basically good people who practice other religions or no religions at all being punished for that. That didn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. But one of the things that didn't make sense was the idea of eternity, punished like forever. Because whatever you see yourself as a creation or manifestation of God, I think we'll agree that we're like the little version of something so big we cannot really grasp. And in our little version of ourselves, we give each other second chances and opportunities, especially if you're a parent. Sometimes as a parent you have to be harsh and you have to be stern, but most normal parents will give their children not only one or two or three, as many opportunities to redeem themselves, to learn from the mistakes, to restore whatever they broke, whether relationship or situation. We give them second chances and third chances and fourth chances. This has talked about 77 chances. So I could not understand how we, with our imperfection and our knack for making mistakes and sometimes behaving pretty badly, could have that mercy in us to give chances to people who hurt us or offended us, and assume the divine, which should be wiser than us, or loving than us, bigger than us, would not do it. That, again, didn't make any sense to me. So I realized that there had to be a system of chances in this life, in the afterlife. And that's where I started contemplating reincarnation. Now, I wasn't very familiar with the idea of reincarnation. I remember as maybe 12, 13-year-old, I read this book, I wrote it here, called Audrey Rose, and they did speak about reincarnation, but somehow from an almost scientific point of view, there was nothing spiritual that I could remember about it, and that got me a bit curious. And then sometimes in my 20s, I read One Life, Many Masters, about a doctor following children who have memories from past life. And I read that, but again, I don't remember it leaving much of an impression on me. It was like, oh, that's interesting. So during my adult years, I still work with the pattern of one life, heaven, hell, maybe purgatory, something in between. But when I started my pagan studies, I was surprised to find reincarnation there. And not only in one tradition, but in several. So it was certainly in the Hindu tradition, but I found it in Wicca. Even more surprising, I found it in the ancient Greeks, especially the philosopher, which I thought were like very logical, scientific-minded people. They might have been, but they believe in reincarnation. And I was even stunned that Pythagoras had a school of thought which was spiritual and belief in reincarnation. I was associated Pythagoras just with math. No idea that he was a spiritual person, much less a spiritual teacher. So again, that got me thinking, but didn't quite click until I left the Evangelical Church. and after I overcame my atheist year. Somehow reincarnation became a truth to me. And I say to me because everybody's truth does vary according to your views of life and your experiences and everything else. But I felt there was something about the idea of reincarnation that was important for this life. I just could not put my finger on it, you know. Yes, it was interesting. Ooh, I might have been Cleopatra in my other life. But there had to be something more than that. I did get some CDs, self-hypnosis CDs, to do regressions, and I did get interesting images and information. I think what made it believable was that I was not Cleopatra. In any of them, I was pretty much regular people, except for one where, you know, my position was a bit higher. But, you know, in all my life, I was just like normal person. In some, I was a bit smarter than other, and I found that interesting because I seem to value intelligence a lot. And as I did these regressions on my own, there seemed to be a pattern that when I misbehave in my next life, I was a bit thicker, not as smart as I wish. So it seemed to be some kind of karmatic punishment there. Then again, in this life, the life was simpler, but they were not, you know, it was a nice life. There was nothing wrong with it. But then I kind of lost interest because, yeah, so you have this collection of life, and that's interesting, but it wasn't teaching me much, or I wasn't able to see the lesson at the time. So I keep it in the back burner, as we say sometimes. And, you know, started my spiritual studies and walked in a spiritual path. And then one day, during a meditation, I had this, I don't call it vision, of something, I wouldn't call it a tribunal, but there were people sitting a bit higher than where I was. And I was there, but it's like, again, like real life. I'm seeing my hands, I see my arms, but I'm not seeing my face. And I was incredibly angry. And as I listened to myself speak and what these people were telling me, the reason I was angry was because I believe in deity, a female deity in this case. That was my one truth, my only truth, and that's it. And apparently I was dead and now gone to the other life, and there was no deity. Not this particular deity or only real, you know, person that you could say that's my god or that's my goddess. But there was these kind of white people. There were men and women, and I was screaming and being as nasty as I could be, and they were so peaceful. So I was saying, let's come down. Once you come down, you will understand, you will start to remember. And I was furious, and I was like, I want to remember it. I want to understand anything. I want to think, where the hell is my goddess? And then I came out of that vision, and I found that, like, oh, well, that's certainly not how I imagine heaven or the other lives to be like. And there was something about the vision that struck true to me. Like, there's something there where I will find something that is key for my spiritual understanding and my spiritual development. So again, I keep on studying, and I can't say that it's an original thought. Probably I just read and meditated so much that everything came together in an idea. But I became convinced that yes, we reincarnate, but we don't reincarnate as a punishment. And so, like, you know, I didn't make him this life, so next time I'm going to be a slug or a cow or a pig or anything like that. We reincarnate with purpose. That there's purpose to come into this world, and the purpose is to grow and to experience this world and learn from all those mistakes we make, from all the victories that we have, from those moments in between that we have. Everything somehow allows us to understand our soul itself better. And for that to be true, the conclusion I arrived was that this has to be voluntary. I mean, if there was a deity, a god, a goddess, whichever, that sort of brought me here, whatever I liked it or not, this would not work. There would be no free will. And that's when I started understanding the idea of free will. You know, there's free will when we accept to come to a lifetime here on earth to find a purpose or develop a skill or learn a lesson. But it has to be something that I see the benefit of. If I'm thrown here, I'm a slave to something. I'm a slave to a god, I'm a slave to a higher intelligence. But it's not a relationship of love between the higher self, the higher intelligence, the universe, God, goddess, divine, and me. It's a relationship of puppet master. You know, I am the master, you're the puppet, go and do what I say. And that somehow started clearing things for me about this lifetime. Then eventually I found Conversations with God books. And I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that many of those ideas seem to be explained there. How, you know, we come to this world and each life is a step closer to our spiritual fulfillment and understanding. The only thing I was not too sure about what I read was this idea that the bad things that happen to us all the time are things that have been planned for our growth. I do believe that's true up to a point. But I do think that sometimes souls just screw it up, to be honest. You know, they get confused, we get confused. We get trapped in the illusion of who we are right now. And we do things that we shouldn't. And that creates, you know, another set of stories and restorations to be made and karma to be paid. So I do think that, you know, not everything bad or we perceive as bad that happened was in the original plan. But that thought, I found it inspiring on how to live my life. Because if most of the things that happen in my life, in a way I have agreed to, then I really don't have that many enemies out there, do I? And I'm not really being punished. I'm being trained. And sometimes I think of life as a boot camp of sorts. And I wonder what kind of maniac would like to go to a boot camp of sorts. And my answer is a brave maniac, someone who sees a benefit in the harsh conditions, who believes that the harsh conditions are going to make them stronger and is going to help them develop essential skills and are going to give them the opportunity to really learn who they are. You know, we all after happiness, but happiness will not always allow us to see our true colors. So I was happy in a sense with Reincarnation. I was happy with the book's Conversations with God, but still there was something missing. I figured what. And eventually, I came to a book called Destiny of Souls by Michael Newton. And I have to say that's one of the most significant books in my life. I mean, I don't like to use the word Bible or anything, but if I had like a text that is pivotal in a spiritual life would be that. Michael Newton is a, well, he started as a therapist, a psychiatrist, and then he became a hypnotist. And when you read the book, you realize, I mean, he doesn't say this in many words, but he does make it clear enough that he started this from a scientific point of view. And he started using hypnosis to help people. And one day, in a regression during the person's lifetime, the person he was regressing seemed to regress. Sorry about that. Seemed to regress to a previous life. Now, Michael Newton did not believe in past life, so he said it was some kind of fantasy that the person was having, and he just played on, and the person's problem was solved. So he became very, very curious about past life regressions. He still did not accept it as much. So again, it was some kind of brain trick or a mind trick, an illusion that, or a story that person had created at a subconscious level. But he trained himself as past life hypnotist and started to apply it a lot with his clients with very good results. And one day again, a client seemed to go somewhere that was not really a past life. And as they talk, Michael Newton realized that he was talking, apparently, of where we go in between life. And, well, you know, again, that went against his belief. Eventually, he gave up and accepted what was given to him. And by the time I read the book, he had done this kind of in-between life regressions to about 7,000 people. And he had trained other hypnotherapists, clinical hypnotherapists. So between his own research and the research of the people who study under him, they have about 30,000 cases, which I think is, you know, an impressive quantity of stories to listen to. And what called his attention and mine was that, yes, worded in different manner because of their own point of view, education, and culture, people were saying basically the same thing. And this is how I understood the description that they were given. They were talking about this place where they go to. One of the things I remember seems to be like this round hub where all the souls seem to come first before they go to wherever they need to go. And it appears that as souls, we tend to group with a particular group of souls. You can call them family souls or classmate souls. And it's basically like the other life is a giant university. And every time you come to Earth, you come to learn something or repeat a lesson that you did not quite achieve on one hand. And when you go back to the other side, part of the purpose is to study that with your study group and see where you fail or where you achieve your goals, what you learn, and by you learning, the others learn with you. And I found it really fascinating because I'm a geek and I love to study. And if I could spend the whole of my life studying and doing nothing else, and somebody would pay me for it, I would do it. So I find that really, really nice. And the other thing is that these souls that share the group tend to work with you. So they tend to come with you as parents, siblings, best friends, but ever mates or spouses. But sometimes they come as enemies or adversaries. So that makes me see those people I don't like that much from a different perspective. And it's easier for me to apply the idea of universal love, thinking that that person that is among me, yes, maybe they may be screwing the whole thing up, but it could be that they have offered to work with me, to test my mettle, to annoy me for whatever reason, for what reason I need to learn by having the experience of somebody knowing me that much. So I really have to listen for doing that. The other thing that was interesting is that we tend to stick to our soul groups, but we do work with other groups of souls. And when what's called the divine curriculum is designed on one hand for your own purpose, but also designed to complement somebody else's mission or study purpose. So this idea of interconnectedness starts to appear all throughout the reading of the book. I don't know why that sort of clicked so much with me. I mean, it was almost like I had the whole information, but reading it in that way, it seemed to illustrate better what was like a bigness in my mind. and yes, there was this idea of a mission being presented to you. You know, you have a teacher and you have guides, and they themselves have teachers, and there is a council, and they say, well, you know, at this stage of your soul's development, you are here, and we think that if you live these different experiences, you will reach another level, and ideas are presented to you, how you would come, what gender, what race, what social status, what nationality, or at least a general idea of it. They do say that they don't give you everything, just the core of the next life that you're going to live. Because things can change. They do admit that things can change, and I remember somebody telling how when he returned, he was furious, and he talked to the people in the council and said, you know, you don't understand. Life on Earth is really, really hard. And that hit me because of that vision I had of being angry and being disappointed because heaven was not what I expected, and having this group of people in front of me very patiently and very lovingly, and listening to my anger and just waiting for me to recover my peace. And again, when I started reading that in the book, it seemed to click and validate my truth in a way. But I find it very satisfactory, this idea of we are offered this mission. I mean, they do say that if you wanted to stay on the other side in this place that is full of support and love and wisdom, you could. Perfectly fine. Nobody is going to kick your little bomb and throw you to Earth or any other planet. But they do say that your advancement will be slower that way. And they also explain that one of the most difficult planets to live in as a soul is Earth, because it has, you know, it has the physical aspect and you have the mental aspect really, really hard. So, you know, mostly brave souls, or very young ignorant souls, in the beginning anyway, come here because they're aware that it's hard, but they do see the benefit of going through this human experience and achieving the purpose of this lifetime. Now, I have a Buddhist friend, and Buddhists do believe in reincarnation too, but she wasn't too sure about the voluntary aspect of the thing. And she said, I don't see the point. Why would you on purpose will come over and over again to the earth, especially since life, you know, how many kind of different lives can you have? You know, some lives will be a bit repetitive. And I like that comment because it made me think. And I thought about the idea of an actor, you know, and actors have different roles, but many roles are very similar, especially with theater actors. You know, they repeat the role night after night, and yet everybody tells you that there's something different in each night, according to what had happened during the day, how the actor felt, how the public or the audience reacted. So I think it's a fed like that. Yes, some life may be repetitive, but they will never be exactly the same. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So every time we come, we hone ourselves, we hone our skills, we develop our spiritual skills. And one of the things that I found, I'm sure they were fascinating a lot, but it is true, about the book, was that some people admitted not being the best or nicest of human beings when they came. And yet, that was the purpose. You know, some people wanted to experience what it was to be rough or hard or violent, or a soldier at war, or the evil guy of the story. And you would say, why would you do that? And then again, I think about the idea of the actor trying to live each experience, but also the idea of complementing somebody else's curriculum. So maybe a victim is a victimizer for whatever reason, either to get rid of the victimizer and prove themselves that they can overcome a difficult situation, or maybe for a sense of restoration for something they did in another life. And if you're a soul, let's be honest, if you're a soul, would you not like to experience every experience there is? And that has its challenges and its dangers, and they do warn you about it. You know, souls can go bad in a way, and they have to be restored and healed when they go back to the other side. And especially souls that got involved into criminal actions, really horrible criminal actions, you know, they have to be separated for some time. But what I found interesting was that it wasn't a punishment as such. It was that once the soul leaves the matter, the physical world, and becomes aware of the spiritual reality and the fact that it's a soul, they tend to sort of self-punish themselves and self-exile themselves and keep themselves away from the others. And in a way, it's true that they create a sort of personal hell, because they feel either ashamed or scared, or they're trying to understand the recent action, or they feel the need of payment or restoration. And your guides and teacher will allow this because they see it as part of the experience, and they will let you be in your mini hell of sorts until they feel that you're ready to go to a healing part and a cleansing part, and then go back to your soul family that is waiting for you. So from that perspective, reincarnation is so cool. You know, it has its challenges, it has its difficulties. We do not choose the easiest of worlds to reincarnate. But in my case, it helped me make sense of this world. Now, one of the things with reincarnation that I have heard some people that, you know, believe in it or contemplate about the possibility of it, is this idea of, oh well, you know, if I don't do it now, I'll do it in my next life. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I have come to a strange conclusion in a way that that's not necessarily true. And allow me to explain why. Let me use myself as an example. My soul came in this body in a certain time to a certain family in a certain country that was going through a certain situation, political and economical. And although it's true that my soul is divine, the person I am today is a mix of my soul and all those experiences of my upbringing, of my perceptions, of my views. And that's what made me Karem. Now, when I come back, even if they send me to the same people. You know, my parents decided to be my parents again. It wouldn't be 1965. I wouldn't have grown in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000. Even if it was Venezuela, in the last 15 years, Venezuela has changed so much that it could be an alien country as far as I'm concerned. But even if it was Venezuela, it would not be the Venezuela that helped me shape into the person I am. To be who I am, I would need to live pretty much the same experiences again, and with the same people, and have the same reactions. And if you listen to cow theory, that's almost impossible. Just as like when you drop a drop of water into your hand, it goes one way, and if you do it again, even if you do the exact point, you know, the drop will go another way, because that's how life is. So we will never be who we are today again, for better or for worse. Karem Barratt will never exist after this physical body dies. And my soul will take a lot of her, but when my soul comes back into another body, you know, yes, part of Karem will be part of that new person, but it will not be who I am today. So when you think like that, you realize how precious life is, because you will never have it again, not as it is now. All the things that we're living for tomorrow, we may not have the chance to do them. Never. You know, if you're thinking of going to the beach tomorrow, and you say, oh, well, you know, I'll do my next life, I'll rest in my next life, I'll the beach in the next life, I'll study this in my next life. You don't know that. There's no guarantee that that is true. So this kind of thoughts has helped me become more appreciative of life and see beauty in everything that happens, even if it's not particularly something positive. There's a beauty in ugliness too, as paradoxical as that sounds. And it has helped me value myself more. You know, in a way, we're like sand statues. You know, when you go to the beach and you see those beautiful sand statues created by a very artistic and very patient person. We're beautiful, we're stunning, but we'll not survive more than one day or two before the tide comes and washes us away. And the sun will be there, and somebody else will come and will make another sun statue. But even if it was the same person, and if he was trying to create the same statue, it will not be the same statue. There's something that changes a bit. Even if it's a minuscule thing, there's something that changes a bit. So, in a way, those people that say that we only live once to enjoy life, they're absolutely right. And those people that ask us not to be afraid of death, because we continue into eternity, they're absolutely right too. So do keep these ideas in mind. And if you're curious about past life and reincarnation, I invite you to explore as much as you can. I mean, there are plenty of books out there, CDs, and maybe you want to go to a proper therapist that will help you. Also notice your likes and dislikes. If you feel a certain attraction to a culture or a moment in time, like Romans, and you live in Africa, you know, there's no structural connection. Study that curiosity you have, and that will give you a certain idea of you might have been in the other life. Well, I think it's almost time for me to go. I hope you found this interesting and inspiring. And I like to finish. Oh, before I go, I'm going to say the name again of the book. I really recommend it. It's called The Destiny of Souls by Michael Newton. You can find it in Amazon, and you can find it in most bookstores. I want to say a few quotes from that book, Destiny of Souls. These were things that were said by people doing hypnosis, to talk about that place in between life. So the therapist asked, what is true forgiveness? And the person in this state of almost soul state answers, it is understanding that each creation has their own method of learning and producing, and they're entitled to mistakes, as I am. The growth process isn't perfect, and you must understand that so you don't always remember people for the hurt you imagined from them in the past. Another person says, the real lessons of life are learned by recognizing and coming to terms with being human. It is how we stand up to failure and duress which really marks our progress. And another person says, being in many physical bodies and different settings expands the nature of our real self. I find that very inspiring. And I want to end with a little prayer to the spirit of life, take into account the theme of reincarnation that we have that day. Okay? Dear Spirit of Life, thank you very much for trusting us and allowing us to have this human experience. Please awaken our inner senses so we may find the lessons in the challenge, the strength in our weakness, the compassion in our pain, the peace amid the anger, and the love amid the hate. Remind us that we are doing the best that we can, that failure is part of the process, that growth is the ultimate goal, and that life, this tiny blinking time, is incredibly precious, and we thank you for it. Amen. Well, dear friends, this is all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening, and stay with the channel. You're going to find a lot of interesting and inspiring ideas and videos here. Good night.